The wind whipped through Keaton Iverson's hair as he stood at the bow of his 65-foot luxury yacht, inhaling the salty air like a man who hadn't breathed in weeks. For the first time in months, the headlines weren't screaming his name, at least not where he could see them. "Mr. Iverson, we're ready to set sail," his captain called from behind, maintaining a professional distance from the 34-year-old tech billionaire who'd been splashed across every business magazine and gossip column for the past month. Keaton nodded without turning. "Good. Let's get moving before someone tracks me down." The rumors had started after his company's controversial acquisition of a major competitor. Claims of insider trading, manipulation, and backdoor deals had sent his PR team into overdrive. Though his legal team assured him everything would be cleared up, the court of public opinion had already sentenced him. Even worse, his now ex-fiancée had jumped ship at the first sign of trouble, giving an exclusive interview questioning his ethics both in business and personal matters. Hence the impromptu 2-week sailing trip along the Mediterranean coast. No press, no business calls, no social media, just Keaton, the sea, and the minimal crew required to operate his vessel, the Solitude. As the yacht began its journey away from the marina in Monaco, Keaton retreated to the main deck lounge, dropping onto a plush sofa and closing his eyes. The gentle rocking of the boat beneath him was already working its therapeutic magic. "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake." Keaton's eyes snapped open. Standing in the doorway was a woman he'd never seen before, slender, tanned, with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore navy shorts, a white button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled to her elbows, and a thoroughly confused expression. "Who are you?" They both asked in unison. The woman stepped forward. "Amelia Morgan. I'm supposed to be joining Captain Reeves' crew for the next 2 weeks, but there must be some mix-up because he said this was a chartered tour." Keaton rose to his feet, suddenly alert. "There's definitely a mix-up. This is my private yacht and I'm not running any tours." The confusion on her face deepened. "But I have a contract." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. 2 weeks Mediterranean coast, leaving today from Slip 14 at Monaco Marina." "This is Slip 14, Keaton confirmed, "but I'm not chartering this yacht to anyone." Before either could say more, Captain Reeves appeared behind Amelia, his weathered face showing immediate recognition of the problem. "Mr. Iverson, I can explain," he began, his normally confident voice slightly strained. "There was a scheduling error. Miss Morgan was hired as additional crew for this journey before your office called for the immediate departure. In the rush to accommodate your timeline, you double-booked my yacht," Keaton interrupted. "Not exactly, sir. Miss Morgan is a marine biologist who specializes in Mediterranean ecosystems. She was brought on for a research expedition that was scheduled for these 2 weeks. When your office called requiring immediate departure, I assumed you were aware of the arrangement." Amelia shifted uncomfortably. "I can disembark at the next port. I don't want to intrude." Keaton pinched the bridge of his nose. The last thing he needed was another complication, another person in his space when all he wanted was solitude. But the earnest expression on Amelia's face made him hesitate. "What exactly were you planning to do on this trip?" he asked her directly. "Water sampling, marine wildlife observation, particularly focusing on how changes in Mediterranean currents are affecting local ecosystems." She spoke confidently, professionally, without a hint of the awe or calculation he was used to seeing when people realized who he was. Keaton looked at his captain. "We're already underway. How far to the next suitable port?" "About 4 hours, sir." 4 hours. 4 more hours of delay before he could truly escape. Keaton glanced back at Amelia, who was already pulling out her phone, likely looking for alternative transportation options. "What happens to your research if you disembark?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, surprised by the question. "I miss my window." The grant was specifically for this time frame, these conditions. Something about her straightforward answer, devoid of manipulation or plea, made Keaton reconsider. Besides, having someone aboard who was focused entirely on marine life rather than his scandal-plagued life might actually be refreshing. "Keep the course," he told the captain. Then to Amelia, "Your research won't interfere with my privacy, not at all. I'll mostly be working from the observation deck and occasionally using the tender for closer water samples. You won't even know I'm here." She paused, studying him with sudden recognition. Wait, Keaton Iverson, of Iverson Tech, and there it was, the moment of recognition he'd been dreading. Now would come the questions, the subtle probing about the allegations, the fake sympathy masking morbid curiosity. Instead, she simply said, "Tough month, huh?" And then immediately continued, "I promise I won't be in your way, and I've signed plenty of NDAs for my work. I know how to be discreet." No judgment, no interrogation, just acknowledgement and a return to the matter at hand. Keaton felt something in him relax marginally. "Fine, you can stay and complete your research, but we're not on a chartered tour. This is my private vacation." Amelia nodded, her expression brightening. "Understood. Thank you, Mr. Iverson. I'll make myself scarce." As she left with Captain Reeves to get settled in her quarters, Keaton returned to the deck, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. He'd come on this trip to escape people, not add more to his immediate environment. Especially not an attractive woman who would undoubtedly have opinions about him based on what she'd read. That evening, Keaton dined alone on the aft deck, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of amber and rose. The chef had prepared his favorite seafood pasta, and for the first time in weeks, he was actually enjoying a meal rather than just consuming it out of necessity. Beautiful evening. He turned to find Amelia standing a respectful distance away, a glass of water in her hand. "It is," he agreed cautiously. "I wanted to thank you again for letting me continue with the research, and to give you this." She approached, placing a folder on the table beside him. "My credentials, research parameters, and the schedule of when I'll need to use various parts of the yacht. I've tried to arrange everything to minimize any impact on your privacy." Keaton glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "You really are serious about your work, aren't you?" A small smile curved her lips. "When you're passionate about something, you don't do it halfway." He raised an eyebrow. "And what are you passionate about, Miss Morgan?" "Besides marine ecosystems, truth," she answered without hesitation. "Finding it, telling it, protecting it. The ocean doesn't lie, Mr. Iverson. It shows us exactly what we've done to it, good and bad." There was something in her directness that both unnerved and intrigued him. "Will you join me?" he offered, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "The chef always makes too much." Amelia hesitated. "I don't want to intrude on your solitude. One dinner conversation isn't an intrusion. It's just good manners when we're sharing a vessel, however unplanned that sharing might be." She sat, setting her water glass down carefully. "So do we talk about the elephant in the room, or shall we pretend you're not all over the news?" Keaton nearly choked on his wine. "Direct, aren't you?" "Life's too short for anything else," she replied. "But I understand if you'd rather not discuss it." He studied her for a moment, trying to determine if there was an angle to her interest. Finding none, he surprised himself by saying, "What have you heard?" "That you orchestrated a hostile takeover of Meridian Systems using insider information, that you manipulated stock prices to force the sale, and that your fiancée left you because she discovered you were morally bankrupt." Amelia recited these points matter-of-factly, as if reading a grocery list. Keaton's jaw tightened. "And what do you believe?" "I don't form opinions based on headlines, Mr. Iverson. I'm a scientist. I deal in evidence. And what evidence would satisfy you?" he challenged. "I'm not the one you need to satisfy," she replied calmly. "But if I were investigating, I'd want to know why a man who supposedly orchestrated this brilliant, devious takeover would fail to cover his tracks well enough to avoid a public scandal. Seems inconsistent." Her observation caught him off guard. It was precisely what his attorneys had argued. If he'd actually been orchestrating illegal maneuvers, he wouldn't have left such an obvious paper trail. "The truth," he said slowly, "is that Meridian approached us. Their CEO was facing personal bankruptcy due to some bad investments and needed a quick sale. The hostile takeover narrative sells more papers than desperate CEO seeks bailout. And your fiancé? Keaton's expression darkened. Turns out Charlotte was more in love with the billionaire lifestyle than with me. When it looked like there might be legal troubles, she decided to rebrand herself as the whistleblower rather than the gold digger. Amelia winced. That's harsh. It's accurate. She was already negotiating her tell-all book deal while still wearing my ring. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Amelia spoke again. Thank you for telling me. I know it's none of my business. Keaton shrugged. Oddly enough, it's easier telling a stranger who has no stake in the outcome. I have some stake, she replied with a hint of a smile. If you're actually a criminal mastermind, I'm trapped on a yacht with you. For the first time in weeks, Keaton laughed a genuine, unguarded sound that surprised even him. I promise not to throw you overboard, Dr. Morgan. Just Amelia is fine, and I appreciate that. It would really interfere with my research schedule. As dinner progressed, their conversation drifted to safer topics: her work studying changing ocean currents, his initial fascination with technology that had led to his first startup at 22. By the time they finished dessert, Keaton realized he'd spent 2 hours in conversation without once checking his phone or thinking about the mess waiting for him back on land. I should get some rest, Amelia said finally. Early start tomorrow for the first sampling. Of course, Keaton nodded. Good night, Amelia. Good night, Keaton. She paused, then added, for what it's worth, you don't seem like someone who would need to cheat to succeed. After she left, Keaton remained on deck for a long time, watching the stars reflect on the dark water and wondering why a simple observation from a woman he'd just met had done more to ease his mind than all the reassurances from his expensive legal team. The next morning, Keaton woke early and went for a swim off the platform at the yacht's stern. As he pulled himself back aboard, he noticed Amelia already at work on the side deck, carefully collecting water samples in labeled vials. Morning, he called, toweling his hair dry. She looked up, momentarily distracted by the sight of him in just swim shorts, water still streaming down his chest. Good morning, sleep well. Better than I have in weeks, he admitted. Something about being at sea. The negative ions from the ocean air, she explained. They're proven to reduce stress and improve sleep quality. Is that part of your research too? She laughed. No, just a useful fact. I'm focusing on microplastic concentrations and their correlation with changing current patterns. Keaton moved closer, genuinely curious. Mind if I watch for a bit? Not at all, though I should warn you, watching someone filter water samples isn't exactly thrilling entertainment. Despite her warning, Keaton found himself fascinated as she explained her methodology, the significance of each test, and how her findings might impact conservation efforts. Her passion was evident in every precise movement, every careful measurement. You really love this, don't you? He observed. Amelia looked up from her equipment, a strand of hair falling across her cheek. I do. The ocean has always been honest with me, predictable in its unpredictability, if that makes sense. Unlike people, Keaton said quietly. Exactly. She tucked the loose strand behind her ear. People are complicated. The ocean is complex but follows patterns. If you respect it and learn to rate it, it rarely betrays you. The words struck a chord with Keaton. In his world of technology and business, betrayal was practically a career strategy for many. Friends became competitors overnight, mentors became rivals, partners became liabilities. I envy that certainty, he admitted. In my world, today's ally is tomorrow's hostile takeover. Is that what happened with Meridian? She asked carefully. Keaton shook his head. No, that was different. Meridian was struggling because their CEO, Alan Parker, had over-leveraged himself in some real estate deals that went south. He approached us privately, asked for a lifeline. We worked out terms that would save the company and its employees while giving him a dignified exit. So why the accusations? Because he didn't tell his board the whole truth, Keaton explained, finding it unexpectedly easy to talk to her. When they realized what was happening, they pushed back. Alan panicked, claimed we'd forced his hand. It spiraled from there. Amelia considered this as she sealed another sample vial. Have you considered telling that story publicly? My lawyers advised against it. Said it would look like I was trying to shift blame, and without documentary evidence of those private conversations, it's his word against mine. And your ex-fiancé sided with them, Amelia concluded. Charlotte saw an opportunity, Keaton said bitterly. She'd been pushing for the wedding for months, frustrated with my focus on work. When this blew up, she realized she could either stand by me through a potentially lengthy legal battle or reinvent herself as the woman who escaped the corrupt billionaire. What evidence do they actually have against you? Timing, mainly. I bought some Meridian stock shortly before the deal was announced. It was part of my normal portfolio diversification. I've been interested in their work for years, but it looks suspicious in retrospect. As they talked, Keaton helped her move equipment around the deck, finding an unexpected satisfaction in the simple physical tasks. By midday, they'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm, Amelia working methodically through her samples, while Keaton alternated between assisting her and catching up on the limited emails. His assistant was permitted to forward to him. When the yacht anchored in a secluded bay for lunch, Amelia suggested they take the smaller tender boat to collect samples closer to shore. Keaton, surprising himself, volunteered to pilot it. You know how to drive one of these? She asked skeptically as they climbed aboard the sleek vessel. I grew up on Lake Michigan, he replied, starting the engine with practiced ease. Had a boat before I had a car. Another fact not mentioned in your Forbes profile, she observed with a smile. There's a lot the profiles miss, he said, guiding the tender away from the yacht. They're more interested in the billions than the person. As they skimmed across the water, Keaton felt lighter than he had in months. Here, with the spray on his face and the sun warming his shoulders, the corporate machinations and media frenzy seemed distant, almost irrelevant. Amelia directed him to a rocky outcropping where the currents created a natural collection point. As she leaned over to gather her samples, Keaton found himself watching the concentration in her expression, the delicate precision of her movements. You're staring, she noted without looking up. Sorry, he said, not entirely meaning it. It's refreshing to see someone so focused on something real. She glanced up at him then. As opposed to image perception, stock prices, all the intangibles that seem to dictate my existence lately. Amelia straightened, tucking her samples into a protective case. Your work is real too, Keaton. Your technology has actual impact, medical applications, educational tools. That's not intangible. Her observation caught him off guard. Most people focused on his wealth, not the purpose behind his companies. How do you know about that? She shrugged. I did some research last night. Your neural interface technology is being used in prosthetics that allow amputees to feel sensation. That's changing lives. Something warm and unfamiliar spread through Keaton's chest. That was the original goal, before everything became about quarterly reports and market share. Maybe this scandal is a chance to refocus, she suggested, sitting back down in the tender. Remember why you started. They spent the afternoon exploring the coastline, with Amelia collecting samples and Keaton rediscovering the simple joy of navigating coastal waters. When they finally returned to the yacht, they were both sunburned, windblown, and strangely content. That evening, they dined together again, this time by unspoken mutual agreement. Amelia shared stories of her research expeditions, the time she'd nearly capsized in a storm off the Galapagos, the midnight dive where she'd witnessed a rare bioluminescent bloom. Keaton found himself relaxing into the conversation, sharing his own stories of the early days building his company, the sleepless weeks coding in a garage, the exhilaration of the first successful prototype. You still light up when you talk about the technology, Amelia observed. Not the business, but the actual innovation. It was always about solving problems, Keaton admitted. The money was just a way to solve bigger problems. And now, she prompted gently, he sighed, now it's about protecting what I've built. Making sure the rumors don't destroy the company and the jobs it provides. Is that why you're hiding out at sea? Protection? Partly, he acknowledged. And partly because I needed space to think without cameras in my face and reporters twisting every word. Amelia nodded thoughtfully. The ocean's good for perspective, makes human dramas seem smaller. As they finished dinner, Keaton impulsively suggested they move to the upper deck to stargaze. Away from coastal light pollution, the night sky was spectacular, a vast canvas of stars reflecting on the dark Mediterranean. Lying on adjacent loungers, they identified constellations and shared the comfortable silence of new friends who didn't need to fill every moment with words. "Thank you," Keaton said softly. "For what? For not treating me like I'm either a criminal or a meal ticket. For just talking to me like a person." In the darkness, he felt rather than saw her turn toward him. "Thank you for letting me stay and complete my research. Most billionaires wouldn't be so accommodating to an unexpected guest." "I'm discovering I like unexpected things," he replied, surprising himself with his candor. The following days established a pattern. Mornings, they would work separately, Amelia with her research, Keaton handling the minimum necessary business communications. Afternoons often found them exploring together, using the tender to investigate coves and coastal features that interested Amelia scientifically and Keaton aesthetically. Evenings were spent in conversation that grew increasingly personal. Keaton learned about Amelia's childhood moving between coastal towns with her marine biologist father after her mother died when she was just 8. Amelia learned about the pressure Keaton had faced as a prodigy whose first software patent came at 16, and the relationships that had suffered from his single-minded focus on innovation. Neither mentioned the growing attraction between them, though it manifested in lingering glances, in hands that found reasons to brush against each other, in conversations that stretched later into the night. A week into the voyage, they anchored near a small, relatively uninhabited island. Amelia had identified it as an important collection point for her research, and Keaton had been drawn to its pristine beaches and clear waters. "Race you to that outcropping," Amelia challenged after they'd anchored the tender near the shore. Before Keaton could respond, she dove cleanly into the water. Laughing, he followed, the cool Mediterranean embracing him as he cut through the waves after her. Though he was a strong swimmer, Amelia moved through the water with the grace of someone born to it, reaching the rocks just moments before him. "Unfair advantage," he complained good-naturedly, pulling himself up beside her. "You had a head start." "Poor billionaire," she teased, water droplets glistening on her tanned skin. "Not used to losing. Not used to playing fair," he countered with a grin. "In business, you never announce your move before you make it." "This isn't business, Keaton." Her voice softened as she said his name. "No," he agreed, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how the sunlight caught the amber flecks in her eyes. "It's definitely not business." The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Then Amelia broke the tension, splashing water at him before diving back into the sea. "Last one back to the tender buys dinner," she called. "We're on my yacht," he shouted after her, laughing as he plunged back into the water. "I'm buying dinner either way." That evening, as they dined under the stars, something had shifted between them. Their conversation flowed as easily as ever, but there was a new awareness, a heightened sensitivity to each movement, each glance. "If your legal troubles were resolved tomorrow," Amelia asked as they finished a bottle of wine, "what would you do differently?" Keaton considered the question seriously. "I'd restructure the company, move back into the innovation division and let someone else handle the corporate politics, get back to what matters, solving real problems with technology that helps people." "And personally," she prompted. He met her gaze directly. I'd be more careful about who I let close to me, make sure they're interested in the person, not the portfolio. The implication hung in the air between them. And you, he asked. After this research expedition, what's next? Back to the university, analyze the data, publish the findings, she replied. Then hopefully secure funding for the next project. Would you consider private funding? The question slipped out before he could reconsider it. Amelia's eyes widened slightly. Are you offering? Hypothetically, Keaton hedged, though they both knew it was more than hypothetical. If you found a patron who believed in your work and wanted to support it without university bureaucracy or grant limitations, would that interest you? That would depend entirely on the conditions attached to such funding, she answered carefully. No conditions, he said simply. Just the freedom to pursue your research wherever it leads. And why would someone offer that? Her voice was soft, questioning. Because they believe in the work. Keaton paused, then added more quietly, and in the person doing it. The air between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken possibilities. Amelia set down her wine glass, her movements deliberate. Keaton, she began, then hesitated. I don't want you to think that any of this has been. I don't, he interrupted, understanding her concern. If you were after funding or connections or whatever else, there are far easier targets than a billionaire under investigation. A small smile touched her lips. True. Your current situation does make you somewhat less appealing as a meal ticket. Yet here you are, he observed. Here I am, she agreed. Though not by design. I've come to appreciate the lack of design, Keaton admitted. Everything in my life has been so calculated, so strategic. This, he gestured between them, wasn't planned by either of us. And that scares you, Amelia guessed. Terrifies me, he confirmed with a self-deprecating smile. I don't do well with variables I can't control. The ocean is full of variables, she reminded him. Yet you seem comfortable there. Maybe I'm learning to adapt. Their conversation was interrupted by the vibration of Keaton's phone, the special tone he'd set for his lead attorney. He frowned, glancing at the screen. I'm sorry, I need to take this. Amelia nodded understanding as he stepped away to answer the call. When he returned 10 minutes later, his expression was unreadable. Bad news, she asked gently. To her surprise, a slow smile spread across his face. The opposite. The SEC completed their investigation. No charges will be filed. Meridian's board has issued a statement acknowledging that the acquisition was properly conducted. Keaton, that's wonderful, Amelia exclaimed. What happened? Alan Parker confessed, he explained, still processing the news himself. Apparently his conscience got the better of him. He admitted to the board that he'd approached us, that the terms were fair, and that he'd lied about being pressured when they questioned the deal. So it's over, she clarified. All of it? The legal part, yes. The PR damage will take longer to repair, but my team can handle that. He shook his head in amazement. I can't believe it. When I left the mainland, I was preparing for months of legal battles. Maybe the universe is telling you something, Amelia suggested with a soft smile. Maybe it is, he agreed, his eyes finding hers. Maybe it's saying that unexpected changes aren't always disasters. The remainder of their voyage took on a new quality, a celebration of possibility rather than an escape from controversy. They explored coastal towns together, no longer concerned about Keaton being recognized. They swam in hidden coves, hiked coastal paths, and continued their evening conversations that grew increasingly intimate. On their final night at sea, before returning to Monaco, they anchored in a secluded bay. Keaton had arranged a special dinner on the upper deck, candles, champagne, and a menu featuring dishes they'd discovered together in various ports. To new beginnings, he toasted, raising his glass to hers. And unexpected meetings, she added, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. After dinner, they stood at the railing watching the moonlight play across the water. Keaton turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I have a confession, he said quietly. Amelia raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? That depends, he replied with a nervous smile. I've arranged to fund your research for the next 5 years. No strings, no conditions. The paperwork is already with your university." Her eyes widened. "Keaton, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. It's not a gift, it's an investment in important work." He paused, then continued more hesitantly, "But I do have a personal question that has nothing to do with the funding." "What question?" she asked softly, though her expression suggested she already knew. "When we dock tomorrow, would you consider staying, not on the yacht, but with me? I'm not saying we should rush anything, but I'd like to see where this could go without the artificial timeline of a 2-week voyage." Amelia's smile bloomed slowly. "I was hoping you'd ask that. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes with conditions," she clarified. "I need to complete my current research obligations, and I won't be a socialite or a trophy girlfriend. My work matters to me." "I would never ask you to be anything but yourself," Keaton assured her. "That's who I've fallen for, the woman who collects water samples at dawn and challenges my perspective at dinner." "In that case," Amelia said, stepping closer to him, "yes." When Keaton finally kissed her, it wasn't with the practiced confidence of a billionaire accustomed to getting what he wanted, but with the genuine wonder of a man who'd found something he never expected. 1 year later, Keaton stood on the deck of the Solitude, renamed Discovery, at Amelia's suggestion, watching his wife direct her research team in collecting samples from the Aegean Sea. The past 12 months had transformed both their lives. Keaton had restructured his company as promised, stepping back from the CEO role to head the innovation division. Amelia had expanded her research with the funding he'd provided, establishing a foundation dedicated to marine conservation. The media had initially speculated that their relationship was a PR move on Keaton's part, a convenient romance to distract from his legal troubles. But as months passed, and they remained steadfastly devoted to each other and to their respective passions, the narrative had shifted. "Thinking deep thoughts?" Amelia asked, appearing beside him with her hair windblown and her skin sun-kissed. "Thinking about how getting on this yacht a year ago to escape my problems led me straight to the solution I never knew I needed," he replied, pulling her close. "The solution to what?" She challenged with a playful smile. "To everything," Keaton answered simply. "To finding purpose again. To remembering why I started building things in the first place. To understanding what actually matters." Amelia leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "And what matters, Mr. Billionaire? Not the billions," he said firmly. "The impact, the innovation, the legacy we're building together." As the Mediterranean sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting golden light across the water, Keaton reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. The rumors that had driven him to escape had ultimately led him to the woman who had helped him rediscover his purpose and find a love deeper than he'd known was possible. Sometimes, he mused, the storms that threatened to sink you were actually guiding you to safer harbors. And sometimes, the woman unexpectedly found on deck was exactly the navigator you needed to find your way home.